Welcome to Pivot to Grow, where our philosophy is leap and grow your wings on the way up. Each week, we will bring not only our many years of experience, but also expert guests in many genres. Together, we will give you a blueprint on not only how to construct your new wings, we'll show you how to utilize them. We will do this with laughter, love, tears, compassion, friendship, and understanding. Here we go.
All right. Hi, Allison.
Hi, Ilya.
All right. So what is your pivot to grow this week?
Pivoting to move. Just one pivot after another while I've been moving into my new apartment.
Okay, great. My pivot was helping Allison move and nails. And so you haven't lived until you go to the manicurist and she decides to lengthen your nails, and then you have to move someone.
Yeah.
So
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I'm excited about our guest today. This is a really important topic. I think it's a major thing on our wheel of life. There's so much confusion around it. So I'll let you introduce our guest.
I completely agree. So we have Dlan James Levitt with us today, and he asks, have you ever wished you were taught how to make a relationship work? The key is not making a relationship work. It is making sure you know what makes a relationship work for you. Most of us weren't given a healthy model for making love work in the modern world. And Dlan James is here to fill the gap by sharing tried and true principles for creating loving, healthy, lasting relationships. Dlan James Levitt is an author, relationship coach, and workshop facilitator who is passionate about bridging the gap between the sexes to make love work in the modern world. He gives singles tools and couples tools to enhance their communication, build deeper connection, and create mutually satisfying relationships. Dlan is also passionate about transforming education and one day plans to found his own university, combining formal education and self-education into one integrated curriculum for educating the whole person.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited about the university. Just before we went on to start recording this, we were talking about some of the training that we both have had and the principles that we've learned, and why in your opinion are people missing these? Where are they missing these? Because they should have been foundational elements of our upbringing.
Number one, I think when we think about education, we think about information. And we think about what information people were given throughout their upbringing. And, I was in some of the best high schools growing up in Massachusetts who had a great education system. I felt like I got a good high school education. I went to university, LMU, got a great education there. But throughout high school, on paper, my life looked great. Like I was getting pretty good grades. I had friends, I was on the sports teams, but there was one big missing link. I never understood women at all. And when I went to try to 13, 14, 15, started getting crushes on girls, I was completely lost. I grew up with a brother, a father, and a mom who was definitely on the more masculine side of the spectrum. And I love my mom to death. She doesn't like when I say that, but that was my experience. And I never learned about, okay, so what do I do if I like a girl? How do I go about it? And that for me was a huge pain point and a big secret, because I didn't want my friends to know. I didn't know what to do, but I was the only kid without a girlfriend. And I felt like other people knew, but I didn't want to talk about it. And it was this big shame spot that grew. And when I got to college, I thought it was going to be different. I thought oh, well, I'll be in college now, college parties, it'll be fine. It'll be easy. Stuff will happen naturally, but it didn't. Kept getting friend zoned. And I think a lot of people, for me, it was really I was a virgin. By the time I got to college, I was super ashamed of that. I'd gotten rejected by the girl I asked to prom. And I just thought there was something wrong with me. And I didn't know what. I didn't know why women weren't responding to me in the way they would to other guys. And that was my experience. But I think we all go through this growing pains, shall we call it, of relationships where there's weirdness, there's awkwardness. We're not sure how to actually communicate attraction, desire, interest, love, because I don't know about the two of you, but I was never taught that. It was literally never discussed in my home. Never had a conversation about sex like upfront with either of my parents. The only thing my mom ever told me was make sure you use a condom. And that was like, this huge blank space in what it means to live a satisfying life and be human, which is to connect and be in relationship. And the fact that we leave that entirely out of education, unless you're lucky enough to take some comm courses like me, it absolutely baffles me, because those are the biggest breakdowns we're seeing in the world right now, are diseases of disconnection.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I completely agree. So you kind of touched on what led you to becoming a relationship coach a little bit. It sounds like that's your backstory. What was that like pivotal moment for you where you decided, this is it, this is what I'm going to do?
There was a couple pivotal moments, but one really comes back to me. One of my best friends, AJ, was junior year of college, and I'd spent the last 2 years of college like buying all these online courses that were basically about like how to talk to girls, like female psychology, and essentially a lot of it was around like how to get laid, because that was what the marketing was, because that like, but what I found was more about how to become the man that you want to be. The how to get laid stuff was like kind of interesting, but I was like, this seems kind of like sleazy and not who I want to be. And there was one program, or one company, The Social Man, and Christian Hudson is the owner and founder of that. And his message was different. It was about, in order to attract the type of woman you're looking for, you have to build certain qualities and traits within yourself as a man. And here's what those traits are. And here's how you build some of those things. And so I would study that stuff all day after I got home from school. And one of my friends, AJ, was like, dude, you're like really like passionate about this stuff and you talk about it all the time. He was my roommate, so he had to hear me spouting off about all these cool little tricks I was learning about how to talk to girls. And he was like, you should like look into doing this. Like you should, consider it. And I was like, I had never considered it, but I studied psychology and communication studies. Was writing all my papers about the psychology of attraction and desire and love in college. And I decided, you know what, I actually can do this. And I saw these coaches making a bunch of money online, selling all these courses. I was like, there's nothing holding me back. And that kind of launched me. I reached out to The Social Man and told him I was a customer and a fan, offered to work for Christian Hudson for free, told him I was a college student and I'd do whatever he wanted me to do, just wanted to learn the business. And long story short, he hired me when I graduated and mentored me for a solid 2 to 3 years as a copywriter, where I was writing a lot of his marketing content. Then I became a coach in the last 3 to 4 years. 4 years now, I've been coaching full time. Like I would say on average about a coaching call a day over the last 4 years. And it's been really a powerful journey for myself. But really, like, the reason I love what I do so much is because every person is a new situation and a new transformation, and you never know what you're going to get.
That's true.
And what is, in your opinion, we have so many Hollywood movies out on romance and all of the sitcoms, and I think a lot of people expect their lives when they're young. They're watching the Cinderella stories and the love stories, and it's supposed to happen that way. What is your opinion on the Hollywood? This is how love is supposed to happen versus reality.
Man, that's a big question. I think we are all conditioned strongly by the messages that we receive as children. And I think a big part of those messages are the things we watch. And personally, I grew up seeing examples of men being either tough guys, masculine, think like the Clint Eastwood masculine stereotype, or knights in shining armor who would come in and save the damsel in distress from their chaotic life and world. Or, the guys who are like stereotypical nice guys who, girls would want to be friends with, but not really anything else.
Mhm.
And those were my models. And I felt like, me personally, I can really only speak from my personal experience. I felt like the Disney narrative put me in a mindset of like, oh, it's my job to sweep a woman off her feet and impress her. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think many men grow up feeling like that is their role as a man.
Mhm.
And what it puts men into is this wanting to impress place, mindset, and way of being. And number one, that comes from a place of lack of like, well, I'm not impressive as is, so I have to add some extra bells and whistles for her to be attracted to me. And I did that for years. I didn't feel like, my early experience taught me if I just did what I was going to do naturally was not going to get me what I wanted. And so I felt like I always had to put on an extra show of some kind. And that was very inauthentic. That's the other bad part about it. So I think when we're living out the script in our head of how things are supposed to be, whatever that script says, because everyone gets a different one,
Yeah.
we're ultimately being inauthentic to our true nature.
Mhm. Oh, that makes sense. That's so good. So I'm wondering, you kind of touched on to what you've experienced and what's led you to this work. What is your ideal client, or what are the clients who are coming to you? What are they going through, and what are they typically experiencing that you
Yeah.
feel you can really help with?
It's a great question. I get a lot of very analytical men. And I love them. I love the smart analytical men who are scientists, engineers, computer people, sometimes even doctors, or and profession doesn't matter. But I get a lot of guys who think about love, dating, and attraction in a logical, analytical, dare I say, systematic way. Now, that being said, the first program I bought from Christian Hudson and the Social Man was the Girlfriend Activation System. And that product made him millions. That product made him millions of dollars alone, which tells you something. It tells you that men think systematically in general. And that's not to say they can't think a different way. They can, but that's their default. So like, for example, one of the clients that I signed last week and I started working with this week, he was asking me about a plan for the night and what his like goals should be if he's going out to like meet people and interact. And I said, first and foremost, goal, meet people, have fun.
Yeah.
Before we get to any of the other specifics. And then I got to the specifics, and then he responded, love the idea of meeting people and having fun, but I'm wondering if you have some more tactical or specific ways of having fun. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. How do I do that? And I said, you can't do fun. And those are one type of guy I get. I get a lot of guys who are 45. No, I won't even say 40 plus, divorced, or are recently going in the middle of a breakup or some kind of relationship ending, and haven't dated in a long time and don't know where to start and are looking for just guidance on how to go about it. And then I also get a good amount of people who are 20 to 26, finding themselves, not sure who they are, not sure about their identity, been misled or just hurt in their dating and relationships in the past, and really want to understand not only who they are, but how to talk about who they are in a way that's compelling.
It's really, so I'm a big TikTok fan. This is how I unwind at night and check out my brain. And so, yes, okay, my guilty pleasure, everybody, now you know it. But it's amazing to me watching the women. I would not want to be a man today in society today, because I'm watching the women on this TikTok where they look completely different. By the time they're done with all this makeup, they look completely different. And I cannot imagine being a man, meeting a woman, and the next morning you have somebody totally different in your life. And I guess my point is if you're going through that much trouble to put on that much makeup to hide who you look like, you're also hiding who you are inside. And so do you address that with your clients of it's okay to be you? It's okay if you have a blemish on your face or you're not perfect, or it's okay to be in, like Legoland, if you're a 45-year-old male, it's okay to be this person?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things is giving my clients permission to let their weirdness or dorkiness or nerdiness shine as bright as the sun, and fully own it unapologetically. Because when people do that, we actually kind of think it's cool. We respect it because we all have our quirks and weird guilty pleasures. Like my weird guilty pleasure is dating shows, like reality TV dating shows, Too Hot to Handle, Love is Blind, The Ultimatum. Like literally, I cry and laugh, and like it's some of my favorite, most enjoyable times sitting there and watching those shows. And I think we were all somehow at some point given some kind of message that there are pieces of us that if we let other people see them, they won't really like.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Or it might kind of turn them off. And we learn to hide those in creative and kind of, what's the word? In very clever ways where we don't realize we're doing it. And part of what I do with my clients is help them see the lies that they've told to themselves.
Oh, that's good.
I was talking to someone last night who's not even a client, but he better be soon because he needs it. But a friend of a friend who I called, who texted me, and I was like, yo, like, we need to talk. And he was saying he was in a situation where him and the girl he was in a relationship and in love with ended. Basically, he tried to continue to make it work after, and it's been 6 months of back and forth, just fighting and kind of up and down, good and bad toxicity. And when I met him a month ago, he was clear he wanted it to be over. It's now a month later, and he's gone back multiple times. And I said to him, I was like, you know that having her in your life is preventing you from moving on. Like, I it was like akin to a drug. I was like, that every time you go back and like let her in again and see her again and have sex again, like that's you just relapsed and you have to restart. He's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. How am I supposed to know that? I'm like, well, what do you feel when that happens? You start to feel all those feelings again, right? He's like, yeah. And I was like, and that she is not interested in being your partner right now. Like, for whatever reason, it didn't work for her. It's like, yeah, you're right. So these things. You just like it. You like the drug. I understand. We all like drugs. Like, dopamine is great, and it comes in many forms. It doesn't have to be the illicit substances. I think love is one of the most powerful drugs of them all. But I think when we really get honest with ourselves and are willing to look at how we've deceived ourselves, misled, or lied to ourselves, that's when we can really start to get to the truth.
You have heard us speak about Jack Canfield and his amazing work, from the Success Principles, Train the Trainer, Breakthrough to Success, and so many more of his wonderful programs. We strongly encourage you to go to pivot2grow.org, click on our affiliate link, and learn more about his upcoming programs and the difference it can make in your life.
I have been wondering, and I'm so glad that I get to ask a relationship coach this.
Okay.
So in the world right now, things have obviously been chaotic for the past couple of years with COVID, and this whole pandemic, and online dating has really, I think, blown up. What are your thoughts on online dating, and then having to pivot during COVID with online dating and meeting people? And I guess that's two questions in one. So I'll let you choose what you want to answer from that.
I love this question. My thoughts on online dating are, aren't you tired of meeting people who you don't really know if it's them, where you don't really know what to say, conversations that go nowhere about the same things, spending time, days, sometimes weeks and months getting to know someone only to never actually see them in person, and all of the other frustration that comes with the process of trying to get to know somebody via message. For me, I'm so tired of it. And I've gone back to it and deleted it a dozen times at least. Like, as a dating coach, I'm like, no, Dylan, like, you can't be, it's not okay to be like pessimistic or to be jaded against online dating. Like, it's a tool, it works. And it is a tool and it can work. And I don't want what I've said to make it seem like it can't work, because it does work for some people. Personally, it's never worked for me. I've spent, hundreds of hours at this point on online dating. I've probably had 2 good dates ever from someone I met online. And I just look at it like cost benefit analysis of time versus like what comes of it. Bad investment of my time personally. And if that's not true for you, if you genuinely enjoy the time that you're sitting there swiping, and like that boosts you and gives you this surge of shall we call it excitement, enthusiasm, great. I've not met people who have that experience. The people I've met say the worst parts of me come out when I'm online. I get judgmental, I get shallow, I don't even read the profiles. The things like, I'm like, oh, come on, bad picture. What is he doing? Like, right? Personally, I get so critical after like 15 minutes. It's just, what I realize is it's the fast food of connection. And with fast food, it seems really good in the moment. It pleases our taste buds for that 5 to 10 minutes we're eating. We're like, oh, this is so good. And then 30 minutes later, we feel like shit. Excuse my language.
Oh, you're fine. That's so good. That is so true.
Online dating is the same thing, because I'll ask you to, like, when you're actually using online dating apps, what is your in the moment experience on average tend to be?
Yeah. Ilya, what is your online dating experience like?
It's been a while, but mine was, I was so judgmental. Too short, too fat, too big, too this, too bald, too but what was I'll tell you an experience I had which was funny was I had judged somebody on an online dating app, too fat, too whatever, and ran into them somewhere. And I'm like, boy, they look familiar. Boy, they look familiar. Nicest person I had ever met. I mean,
Wow.
This person was great, amazing. They did not look in person like their picture. And it really showed me what, can happen if we stop being so judgmental. And then I thought, I cannot take a picture to save my life. You take a picture of me, I suddenly look like the, Wicked Witch of the West. Nothing you can do. I've tried professional photography. I don't look good. Okay. No matter what, I can't look good on a photo. And I'm thinking, wow, there's other people out there like that too. So,
Yeah.
and what is yours?
Oh,
Allison?
yeah, I was trying to avoid this one.
Oh, no.
Push it off onto you.
Oh, no.
I've tried so many different sites. Currently on eHarmony and not using it too often. But yeah, no, you're right. And I didn't think of it that way. It is the judgmental piece, right? Like, it's so easy for me. I have my checklist in my head of what I'm looking for. And that's a problem because I don't necessarily know, like, what I'm looking for could show up in a different package than what I have in my head. And so I try not to go off looks, but then I read the profiles and there's a checklist there. It's like, I don't want to meet someone who has, maybe it's a ton of kids and a crazy ex-wife that's still bothering them. And so those things are like automatic no's, but then you can meet the sweetest person who has kids, who has an ex, and you just, you don't know, but because that judgment comes in so soon, you miss out on an opportunity to get to know someone.
And an opportunity to experience something new.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
when the person meets all your checklist, you've already predetermined how that's going to go in your head.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I personally love the unknown and the mystery and the surprise. And I think online dating puts people in a place where their masks are amplified.
How many times have we heard somebody shows up and they didn't look like their picture? They, suddenly
lied about the age.
Yeah, suddenly they're 40 years older and they weigh 300 pounds more and they're, a foot shorter.
Or they're actually married.
And they're married and they're dragging along the triplets with them. Yes.
Yes. We've gone too far. People, we've gone too far. We are literally shopping for people to have sex with online on our phones. That, and then it's fast food shopping. Like it's clear to me. And that's why I have the message I do, is like, aren't you tired of it? Because 98% of people I talk to are tired of it. The ones who aren't are super good looking dudes who get hundreds of matches, who are just having a rotation of women come through on a weekly basis, which is not healthy for them or women, but obviously they're happy for the time being. So that's like the tiny subsection of people that I think online dating truly satisfies even. But really, what are we on there for? We're on there to find somebody to connect with on a deeper level than the physical. And the entire platform is built to connect on the physical and the outside, what's the package? That's a good way of putting it. So what I coach people on is, especially guys who come to me, because guys who come to me are generally not people who are comfortable starting conversations with strangers in general. And if walking up to a beautiful woman and starting a conversation, even if it's just, hey, how's your day going? Like something super simple, or asking for directions, even like something like that. If that scares you, we have a problem. Because that means other things are going to scare you. Going on a date is not going to be easy if you're scared to even start a conversation. And I believe that as a man, it's your role to initiate a conversation if you want to play the masculine role in the relationship. If you want to play the feminine role, wait for women to come and talk to you. It probably won't happen so often unless you're like Brad Pitt. And I'm all about putting the power back into our own hands as individuals. The reality is, we go online because it's convenient. It's easy. We don't have to get out of our house. We don't have to talk to a stranger. We don't have to put ourselves out there. We don't even have to talk on the phone. We can just hide behind our words. You don't have eye contact. You don't have vocal tonality. You don't have any of the 90% of communication that comes from everything we're saying without our words. So if you really want to maximize your opportunities to meet the type of people that you enjoy being around, that you enjoy as partners, it requires a little bit of strategy and it requires a lot of guts.
I think, and being vulnerable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, courage. And the vulnerability is one of the hardest parts for the men.
Because I think, again, we go back to the stereotypical, what we think men are supposed to be like. I think the best dating advice I ever got was from my dad, who he was much older when he adopted me, much older. And so he grew up in an era in the 20s, 30s, 40s that, men were men type thing, John Wayne type men. But he sat me down one day and he said, I'm going to give you some dating advice, which was unusual for a man of his era.
Right.
And his dating advice was, you find a man that you like, communicate with him what you will tolerate and what you won't tolerate. So if you want the door open for you, if you want the seat pulled out for you, communicate with them. And if they forget that, you can remind them once. After that, they're not worth your time. They're not listening. And then his second piece of advice was, what are the things that you like to do that you're not willing to give up? And so mine was going to a play. I love plays. I love theater. I love, opera. I love Disney movies, love, if a Winnie the Pooh movie comes out, I'm there. And, stuff like that. Take them to those places. Do they fit in? Are they willing to fit in? Are they willing to compromise with you? Because you're going to have to compromise as well. You may have to go to an auto show and look at classic cars for 3 hours in the sun, but it's a compromise. If they're not willing to compromise, then they're not going to be worth it. And the last piece of advice he gave me was, take them to eat spaghetti or ribs. That'll tell you everything you need about their table manners. And if they can't pass that by, move on. So,
wow.
So what
Nice
is
man.
So what is your advice, if you had to give some quick advice to people on finding, it's not, let's not even start with love. Let's just start with having a relationship of dating.
Number one, I would say, know yourself is the broad advice, but we're going to go more specific into that. Know what your deal breakers are, meaning similar to what your dad told you, what you are unwilling to tolerate. I would also say, know what you need from a partner. And this, when I say what you need, like, we all want attention and we all need some attention. We all, need affection and love, and like, they're broad needs. But when I say know what you need from a partner, know how you can tell them and direct them to speak your language. So for example, for me, I know that in a relationship, I need someone that's going to do the listening and be able to ask me questions. And oftentimes what I've found is, like, the person that I'm in a relationship with may be willing to listen, but not necessarily like probe or ask questions or engage in that way. And I've had to communicate, because sometimes they just will agree with me or say that's awesome or great job. And so, and I never, like, that wasn't what I was looking for. And it's not, I don't know what stimulated me. I wanted like the back and forth. And so I've learned to ask. I know I talk a lot. I know I go on and on about a lot of things. I know sometimes it's a little difficult to follow the train, but I really love it when my partner engages by asking questions and the curiosity. I'm not expecting you to do it every time, but I just want you to know that.
That's really good.
That is.
It makes me think, when you talked about asking for what you need, it makes me think about the love languages. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the 5 different love languages?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing book that everyone could benefit from reading, who wants to be able to understand themselves better and understand what they actually, how they receive love and how they express love. And this goes back to like the things that we weren't taught about love. Like, I personally love gifts, as shallow as it may seem to some people. Like, I love giving gifts and I love receiving gifts equally. And Christmas was always my favorite holiday. And that's one of the love languages. The others are, let's see, words of affirmation, physical touch or physical affection, acts of service, and tokens of affection are the gifts. And I'm forgetting the fifth.
Isn't it so there's the words of affirmation, there's the physical, there's
Quality time.
Quality time.
Quality-
Yes, I
yes,
knew I was
okay.
forgetting one. I'm like, I'm forgetting this one, and it's
Apparently
probably because
it's not any
it's
of
not
ours.
high on ours. So mine is acts of service is at the top.
Yeah, and when I say know what you need in order for things to work, that's a big part of it. How do you give love? How do you like to receive love? And what are the parts about you that are hard to deal with as a partner? Like, I know personally, I like to be right, and I often get defensive. And that's something that, like, I need someone that's going to be able to be compassionate and not dig in when I'm starting to become that way.
Okay.
And I know myself well enough to know, like, it doesn't work for me to be in a relationship with someone else that's also very opinionated and very much like wants to be right about what they think. Because I've been with people like that, and it was great at first, but it just becomes like we're always having a debate.
Oh, interesting.
So I think that's really important. And then the biggest one for me, honestly, is how two people respond and communicate in conflict.
That is so true. That is, wow. Yes.
That's my job.
I just, yeah, you know, that is the whole thing, is how do people respond to conflict is so major. And I don't think that we as a society set people up to deal with that conflict or how to work through it. And so I think that's one of the reasons we have so many relationships that break up is I'm done, I'm out of here. It's simpler than to work through it. And we're not talking about domestic violence or emotional or physical abuse here. We're talking about, you know, you leave the toilet seat up and I want it down. And how do we, you know, and that becomes a escalation.
Or the dish left in the sink.
Yeah. And how do you work through that as a couple? You know, that is something we're not taught.
And then knowing
We're
to
not.
content necessarily, it's what's underneath that, the whole process of it and how they argue.
And I would imagine in both of your experience, there's some level of having to walk on eggshells when you feel like the other person is upset, like someone you've dated is angry with you for whatever reason, or feels some type of way about something. There's that walking on eggshells, trying not to let any blow-ups happen.
Yeah, and I think more for females, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen with males, but more for females, we're taught that, you know, good girls don't act out, and that you don't, you know, that you try to make the other person happy, your partner happy. That's what we're taught as, you know, society. And conflict is bad, you know, especially if you come from a background of abuse of any type as a child, you try to avoid that. And suddenly you're looking at 20 years into a marriage, still walking on eggshells, and you've lost yourself. That's one of the things I coach on, is women who have lost themselves and how to gain themselves back. And so I think if we learn early on how, like you were saying, instead of walking on those eggshells, stomp all over them and let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how do we talk about it in a way that we don't trigger each other?
We call you.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, exactly.
It's so interesting how simple yet difficult at the same time it is to address conflict without further triggering one or more of the parties involved. And the first step is the hardest step, and it's the thing that most people aren't willing to do. And it's stepping fully into the other person's shoes, fully and completely, what's called perspective taking. And they call it this in the psychological literature. people who are naturally inclined to do perspective taking, which is step into their partner's shoes and fully experience whatever the conflict was from their side of the situation, what it would have been like for them, what they might have been thinking when we were acting a given way, how they might have perceived us that's different than we felt or perceived ourselves. When we do that, we're able to see ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And we're able to see, oh man, I might have not gone about that in the best way. There might have been certain ways I contributed to this conflict. And there always is, because there's always two sides to a conflict.
Except for me, I'm perfect. So I just want y'all to know that I am just perfect, and it's always the other person's fault. Let me get that out. Okay.
You better
And
be
we
careful.
can allow that.
Push you over here.
I also have the theory it's my way. Get on board or get out of the way. I'm going to run you over. But hey, okay.
Yeah. And so here's an example of addressing conflict in a way that works that most people aren't willing to do.
Mhm.
You know, let's say I showed up 20 minutes late for a planned date that we had. And
Don't look at me like that.
Yes.
we'll say it's a close relationship, two people that have maybe been dating for a year or so. But one person gets upset about it. And let's say I as the man showed up 20 minutes late. I get there, she's upset. And she's like, oh man, this again, you don't care about me. Like every time we make plans, and she starts going into like all of what she's feeling. It's so easy, and almost, it's so easy in that moment to start saying, well, this is why I'm late. Explaining ourselves. That is not what people want to hear who are hurt. And we, as the person explaining ourselves, think, oh, by them understanding our side of the situation, maybe they'll have a little bit of compassion and they won't feel as, as bad or whatever they feel. But that's not actually true. What we hear on the other side of that, what the woman hears, is excuses for essentially, this is like, you're making it okay what you've done. And a lot of times that's not the other person's intention. And so when conflict is happening, and usually two couples like that, what they'll do is they'll be like, the woman will kind of be like, you know what, it's fine. You're here. Let's eat. Let's have fun. Right. With still ways of being still frustrated and still shut down. And then the man is like, oh man, now we go into damage control. Now we start trying to be all perfect and try extra hard to learn about her day and everything that's going on in her world. And we try to essentially show her that we're making up for it. None of this addresses the conflict. The conflict was, you broke your word. And now I feel unappreciated or disrespected or whatever it is. So if I, as the man, show up 20 minutes late and the woman says, you're late again. Like, I've been here waiting for 25 minutes. Like, what's going on? I feel like you just don't care. If I, as the man, say, you know what? I know I felt so bad that I kept you waiting. And from your shoes, you probably feel like I don't even care enough to show up for you on time. And I know that makes it really hard to trust me. And I'm not going to defend myself. And I will absolutely be better. I will show up on time. And I know you might not be able to trust that right now. But today, I really wanted to be here on time, and I know I wasn't. And I seem like an asshole. I'm sorry you're hurt.
received a lot better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what can you say to that? As a woman, if that situation were to happen and a man said that, it's like you only have a few options on how you're going to respond to that.
It's true. And I think for most women, if it was not a continual thing where you've heard this 70 times already, it would be, thank you for your honesty and being, thank you. And, the resentment wouldn't be there going into the date or the time together. That resentment wouldn't be there. That's my take. What would yours be?
Yeah, I think the same thing, like definitely a different response because you're acknowledging the elephant in the room rather than trying to dance around it.
Yeah. And it requires owning our side of the equation that we're responsible for vulnerably, authentically, and just seeing what happens. And most people aren't willing to do that, but when you do, it's like, oh wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it would be.
I completely agree. So one thing I want to make sure we cover, because I know just before we wrap up, I want to make sure that our listeners know where to go to find your services.
Yes.
So you can reach Dlan if you go to www.sparkofattraction.com. We're also going to post everything on our website, so you can check it out at pivottogrowth.org. And then if you want to share real quick, Dlan, what is it that you offer clients who are coming to you right up front? Do you do any sort of consultation, and what does the process look like, just so they know?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do a one-time consultation call. And really what that is, like, if you're listening to this and anything I've said today resonates with you, or you're feeling like there's something that you really want to shift in order to finally feel like you have the partner and the person that you want in your life, then reach out to me by scheduling a call on my website. You'll see the book now button. And the first call is really just me meeting you, asking you questions, understanding where you're at in your life relationship journey, and mostly just me being curious about what you're really looking for and how I can support you, or if I can support you. It's not a sales call. I'll be very clear about that. If after the 45 minutes of us getting to know each other, you want to learn more about how you can continue to work with me, I will then at that point go into it. If you don't, then that's okay too. What I do offer is a number of packages. I offer one-time calls because I think there are a lot of people that are out there that are like, I don't want to sign up for like a 3-month course of like coaching for relationships, but I'm in a really tough spot right now. I don't know how to handle this conversation. And, this person is putting me through the ringer in this way. What do I do? And if you're in that situation, I do a one-time call. It's a 2-hour call because it takes time to dig into it. And it's $250 for that. That's honestly, like, a lot of people, especially right now, are just like, give me the one-time call. But for those of you who really do feel like, okay, like, I want to transform who I am as a man or a woman so that when people meet me, they're like, whoa, you're not the same person that I used to know. Like, there's something more alive and radiant and strong and charismatic about you. That inner transformation requires time, and I offer 3-month coaching programs that are transformational in nature. We transform the inner part, go through all of the stuff that's holding you back, and then I build your communication skill set and essentially give you like tailored communication and conversational techniques, but that are tailored to your personality.
That's awesome.
That's really my specialty, is communication, and like ultimately relationships come down to communication. So if you feel like you're failing, or that's a strong word, struggling with communication in your relationship,
opportunity there for growth.
I'm the communication wizard, as many of my clients tell me. I'll own it.
And if you're single and you are a continual dating person who can't find somebody to date more than 2 days, I think you would definitely benefit from this coaching. I strongly recommend it, because it's not the other person, as you keep saying, it's going to probably be you. So Yes.
Oh yeah.
And I do focus on working with single people. That being said, I also have coached 3 couples in my life, and I love it. So if you're not single, don't feel like, oh no, like I won't be able to help you. I love coaching couples. Most of my clients are single men and women. But yeah, all are welcome.
I was actually looking at some statistics before we started this podcast. And in the United States, 44.2% is the divorce rate right now. Out of that divorce rate, and they say it's falling, and it's simply falling because people aren't getting married any longer. But one of the major components of that was the couple-sided communication issues. A lack of communication or being able to communicate with each other. So yes, if you are married and you are having those issues, relationship coaching, it used to be couples counseling was what everybody went to.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very successful. Counseling, it was not, I went through with my first marriage, I went through counseling, and I ended up divorced. So it'll tell you how successful it is, where now I've met some couples coaches. That would have been so much better. It would have been so much better to help with that communication.
Yeah, there's something very powerful about having the arguments you typically have again and again, and every couple has them, in front of somebody else.
Oh yes.
and as a couples coach, like that's not the only thing we do, but that's one thing that like I love doing, because the 2 people in the relationship see how they're responding, and they see the pattern, and then they see a different way that someone could respond, and they're like, wow, I've been doing this for X amount of years, responding the same way to the same, we call it a bid for connection. That's John Gottman's work. He's a very
familiar,
well-known relationship counselor, and we're all giving little bids for connection, and how we respond to those bids determines ultimately the success or lack thereof in our communication. So well said, Ilya.
Well, thank you so much, Dylan, for being here with us today. We're going to have everything posted on our website at pivottogrow.org, so you can check out Dylan for yourself if you need help or support in your relationship. And like he said as well, even if you're single, if you're a couple, definitely check out his work. Thank you, though, for joining us.
Thank you so much. This was so fun today.
It was. Thank you so much for having me.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on this YouTube channel and podcast are solely the views of the individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and guests can change at any time. Pivot to Grow does not verify the accuracy of the information contained in the YouTube channel and podcast and is not responsible for this information. Pivot to Grow and its hosts assume no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of the YouTube channel and podcast. The information contained on the YouTube channel and podcast is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness. The information published on this podcast and YouTube channel is for informational purposes only. Any reliance you place on such, you do at your own risk. The information provided is not meant to be a substitute for professional, legal, medical, mental health, or financial advice. If you require professional services, it is your responsibility to seek it out from a licensed attorney, mental health practitioner, physician, or financial services professional. In no way is the information provided meant to be a substitute for medical or psychological advice. This information does not serve to diagnose, treat, or provide a cure for any condition you may be experiencing. Pivot to Grow does not claim to and will not be held responsible for diagnosing, treating, or curing any physical or mental health condition. This podcast and YouTube channel does not take the place of listeners' healthcare professional. Under no circumstances should listener stop seeing his or her healthcare professional. If listener decides to take action based on the coaching and advice he or she receives from Pivot to Grow or a guest on Pivot to Grow, listener does so at his or her own risk.